is up, everybody? Welcome to NFTs in the Arena. You're with your hosts, Mike and John. John, what's going on, man?
Hey Mike, what's happening? And how's everybody doing?
Yeah, hopefully they can answer you.
Oh, that's brilliant.
We'll keep that in the recording. So, John, it
Brilliant.
started off this week. I was doing a lot of research in the NFT in the sports space, and it's quite interesting, I think, because also just by virtue of the conversations I'm having, a lot of people obviously think that this NFT phase is already gone out and the NFT winter is in place. And obviously it's like I explained in the previous episode, we've gone through this cycle with crypto and NFTs. I believe is following suit. And
Yes.
one thing that we are of the opinion on, especially from the sports finder side, is that sports NFTs aren't slowing down, and the NFTs in the sports arena are, it seems, the ones that initially pioneered it, like we spoke about before, but are now still carrying it through this particular period in time. And an interesting study that I found, it was on a website from Sports Pro Media, where they spoke about the study that was essentially developed that showed that NFTs are helping power the sports memorabilia market. And I think it's valued at $227 billion by 2032. So
Wow.
obviously the idea of NFTs currently, and last year specifically, was allowing individuals to collect special moments in time with sports athletes in which they are fans of. Basically, like we did with Billy the Kid Dib with his collection, the two-time world boxing champion, where his fans will effectively buy his NFTs on the Sports Finder marketplace. But now, obviously, memorabilia, special moments in time, and I think there's so much more to this NFT industry than meets the eye. And I know you've been doing some research on the space yourself. Like, what are your thoughts on how NFTs and sports can help maybe help take advantage of memorabilia, and what do you think forms part of this massive market cap that they envision by 2032?
Well, I think it's just about moving everything into the Web3 space, like from a data collection point of view and supply chain. So essentially, memorabilia could be physical or it could be digital, but that doesn't change the fact that an NFT can't be physical, if that makes sense. Like, it's merely just about linking that physical object to a certain, should I say, code that is on the blockchain. So that's where I think they're moving, because essentially everything can be quantified easier, and it also can be processed easier, or should I say more efficiently. So that's essentially what should I say, globalization is trying to look at. And from a fan's perspective, this is just guaranteeing the authenticity of their memorabilia, and at the same time instilling a long-term sustainable relationship with that person through these smart contracts. So I think that's where the advantage is that they can keep connected with their fan in a very fundamental way, and also a very efficient way, rather than the old school SMS campaigns, email campaigns. Marketing in general is going to become very solidified, because everything's going to be running more effortlessly and fluidly. So yeah, that's where I see their projections with this kind of portfolio by that time is merely linked to the fact that it's everything that's currently happening in the Web 2 and physical domain is just going to find its way onto that space in the long run.
Yeah, I think you articulated that very well in a very interesting way.
Sure.
And I mean, later on in that article, it kind of alluded to, like, again, the NBA, which we've spoken about before, how they pioneered the space. And quite recently, I think this past week, they partnered with Magic Johnson, who was obviously a very famous athlete for the NBA, for the Lakers, and and other NBA teams. But what is interesting is that you've seen a lot of these sports guys, celebrities, pioneering the space, like Snoop Dogg. And Magic Johnson now has obviously collaborated on the NBA Top Shot, which is the NFT site where they've partnered with the NBA to sell the athletes' NFTs. And I mean, this guy is obviously well out of in retirement and still a very big name to this day, particularly in the United States, where majority of the market is currently in the world. But like what I'm finding interesting is that these athletes now are seeing something that not a lot of people are doing, and they're using their network and their name and their brand to leverage this, because I think the access to market now and to a greater audience is giving them the opportunity to take advantage of this. And I think it's incredibly fascinating. I mean, he's even gone into partner with this company called Simwin. It's basically a sports NFT platform where it's actually they term it Magic Johnson invests in the metaverse gaming mashup of sports, esports, gaming, Web3. So essentially a platform that's a mashup of all of these things that we're talking about now. It's incredible to see where the technology is going to go and how interactive this is going to be for fans, because this is now when fans can start perhaps competing directly with the athletes on these certain platforms and having that engagement. And this is what the utility, I think a lot of people speak about, will amount to.
I totally agree, bro. It's the way it's going to be able to funnel. You don't want to like try and create a metric in the or should I say a hierarchy in the fan metric, but there's just a nature that's intrinsic, and that will happen. Should I say? And this is what's going to allow the artist or the athlete to be able to engage with their most loyal fans and be able to source them a lot easier than in the past. And this is an idea that I thought about many years ago. I was like, it was in the music space. I just thought, how can artists engage with their most loyal fans in a very virtual manner? You know, like, it's just interesting that how everything's panning out, because it just seems that is the level of understanding us as human beings can get to. And essentially what we can understand, we can code. And that's just how the whole system works in this physics, should I say?
Yeah.
Based on this physics. Yeah. So we're doing the utmost.
If you want to learn about the physics of NFTs, this is the place that you come to.
Yeah, we should actually do a very scientific version of it someday.
You know what? They're just actually like talking about this. Like, I mean, there we would quite clearly be acting like we know what we're talking about when it comes to what you were just referring to.
Yes.
And what is it saying? I was discussing this with a friend today, is that all these NFT projects that blew up last year with these massive things where they were promising people you can effectively get equity, or you're going to get a piece of the pie for this entity and this future vision, and we're going to essentially leverage the funds in which we've generated via these NFTs to propel a project. Discord, Telegram, the works. Everyone that's watching this will know about that. Everyone that's been involved in this space, just even reading about it, will know that that is the route in which one would follow last year. Yes. And my point is that everyone was just creating this out of nothing and just following each other. It was like the sheep, literally. It was interesting, and I would imagine the .com boom having been the same back in 2000, right? And before that.
100%.
Everyone just moving, and like it was super fascinating to see. But what has obviously come to light now, a lot of these scammers and fraudsters are being investigated by the FBI in the United States, and I'm sure internationally.
Yes.
There was that one porn star, I can't remember her name, that allowed. She allowed fans to supposedly have greater engagement with private chats and whatever it was. I can't remember the details around it, but effectively she launched an NFT collection. People bought into this, and I think she raised over $1 million. Yeah. And the next day, next day or week, I don't know the timeline, but the fact is that she came out and effectively said, "No, there's too many people. She's out," but she didn't return the money, right? And now she So obviously, like, there was more serious things like that. And like, there's a lot of fraudsters and scammers going around now. It's actually insane, dude. And the scary thing is these guys will effectively not derail this movement in which we are heading, but certainly dampen it and slow it down, because the trust in which people and the amount of investment that's going to be required to to maintain this Web3 space, and cybersecurity being a big part of that is going to be incredibly interesting. And I would love to see and love to know which way it's going to progress, because I do believe that if this was not the case, the progress of innovation would certainly be a lot more ahead than it is now.
Yeah, look, I think that totally makes sense, bro. And I was listening to a podcast with Vitalik and Naval Ravikant. They were having a chat. It was very deep, dude. But somewhere along the chat, they mentioned that, or Naval mentioned that the chain with the most decentralization will win in the end. So I thought about that. And that's essentially what will mitigate cyber, or should I say to a large degree, mitigate the cyber issue or cyber security issue. Purely because if the blockchain is very well coded and well designed, the opportunity for hackers to find a weak point, or should I say find an opportunity, and even just because there's two options in cybersecurity. There's either the point where people hack, or there's this issue with fraudsters. Now that's a community thing, dude. Like, unfortunately, if you're going to have a weird person out there that has a large following, especially in that space, they can easily leverage the community with NFTs, because that's what it's predicated on, essentially. Having a community support this project. And on the other hand, with the security issue, the better the chain is when it comes to the design, the better the opportunity for not having cyber security issues. And this is where I believe Pulse Chain will be the chain that will supersede Ethereum in the long run, purely because of that protective and well-coded and well-designed chain, in my opinion.
So, in saying that, dude, do you think that, like, now there's the celebrity and other celebrities that have done these NFT collections and effectively tarnished their name now, the example that I just gave, and you'll effectively get athletes doing this, doing these campaigns, and my point is, right, they are so vulnerable in this space. Like, if something were to go wrong, and the message in which they try to communicate with the NFT collection that was supposed to go out to their fans, where the fans were paid and nothing amounted to it, how that would derail their career. My point is that a lot of athletes, as much as they're looking to create different forms of revenue, that I believe we will get to the point where the decisions they're making is just solely based on brand, solely based on the commercial rights, as opposed to playing the sport. And you actually think that the sport will become more digital and less competitive in the physical realm, which is maybe where the future will end up, right? I think it's so interesting to think like the big picture around that, particularly with sports and NFTs.
Well, look, this is the beauty of determining what the character of the athlete or artist is, essentially. If they're focusing more on the NFT and the monetary perspective of it, then it just tells you that perhaps they got into sports or artistry for money, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No, but this is an interesting conversation, dude. I'd actually love to explore it. So what you say now, as a person, a sportsman that's pursuing money as opposed to actually a potential challenge or being part of a bigger team, but maybe not earning as much as the highest paid player. They're called mercenaries, right? And they often refer to players like Cristiano Ronaldo, Paul Pogba, all these big players that will rather go to big teams in order to play money. But obviously Ronaldo, I don't think it applies to him. But guys like Carlos Tevez, when he left Manchester United to Manchester City to earn more money. You got guys that are leaving certain teams just to go earn more money and not having any respect for the club or the loyalty. The loyalty in teams is obviously gone. And I know we've spoken about like Sir Alex Ferguson and Arsene Wenger, how they remained at clubs, and that loyalty is no longer there. And you often see now the athletes are like these entertainers where they're posting with their fashion, their watches, their NFT collections, and their crypto and whatever that may be, all for image. And the worst thing about it is, being a Manchester United fan, They're known as social media FC. They literally will only sign a player if they know they can sell a certain amount of shirts. They'll look at his social media engagement, and in their shareholder meetings, they talk about social media hits, and they look at which players are more favored by the fans just by virtue of their interactions on social media. And it's becoming so much about the brand and making money that it's definitely got to the point where people are thinking that sports is changing for the worse and not for the better. But obviously,
Yeah.
other people could argue that because the amount of money that's going into this can be invested in grassroots infrastructure and the likes. But I do think that the more avenues in which an athlete can generate revenue might start distracting them from actually focusing on the thing that actually brought them to this point in their life.
Yeah, I totally agree, dude. And like, if you look back at the Roman Empire and just go through history, you will find that sportsmen in general were high-egoed individuals. And I think it's still prevalent today. Like, for me, what was an interesting thing that I came across was Benfica is one of the most profitable clubs. No, they are the most profitable club in Europe when it comes to transfers. And if you look deeper at the reason why, you'll find that because Portugal has a very good relationship with Brazil due to their past, a lot of Brazilians have an easy opportunity to get into Portugal. So what you find is that there's a high input of Brazilians coming into Benfica, and they upskill them and then they sell them for high. So you'll find that just because of the nature of Brazilian football, they're more about the game. Like, they're playing with, they're a poor country, they're playing with tennis balls, they're playing with flat balls, bro. They're playing on sand. It's about the game there. And then you find that these are the best players in the world that's getting sold for the most. If you really do the research, you'll see that the most sold players, 50% roughly, is from Brazil. If you look at their grassroots. And this is interesting, dude, because it's speaking more about the game versus when they come into Europe, they grow up and they find that it is all about the decadence of the sport, because you are already good. You can maintain your talent through all this other bullshit that's happening. Because look at it, there are still players that bring it despite their social and all that. But is it the best potential that the team has were that to be taken away?
I think the person that effectively mastered that was Cristiano Ronaldo. He was able to handle both worlds, dude, and he completely executed that, much like David Beckham did, right? And then you get other players like Neymar, who focus so much on the money to go to PSG, a worse league than the Spanish league, which is not the top league in the world anymore anyway. In the pursuit of money and the hope of all this fame and being the person and no longer being in the shadow of Messi at the time at Barcelona. And he hasn't won the Champions League. He hasn't reached the heights. He hasn't won the Ballon d'Or. If he had just stayed at Barcelona and focused on that and just been okay with I understand he felt like he was in the shadow of Messi, and I could understand that. But I do think he maybe should have gone to a better team in a better league, right?
Yeah.
And it's in line with this modern day player, right? And I can see them with their NFTs and stuff, but I've also noticed a lot of them had collections and they just dead in the water because the athletes weren't willing to actually advertise these NFTs. It's such a common thing. And it's partly due to this ego that you're referring to. I don't really want to post this because it's not in line with my brand and me with my fashion and my training. Meanwhile, they don't realize that if they were to back their own collection, they would generate so much money. And we've seen this with many athletes. A lot of the athletes in the NFT space, if you aren't educating them to educate their audience, you're not going to sell these NFTs, because what they just need to realize is that even if you go on a platform that has no audience or you go on a platform that has a massive audience, the people that are likely to buy your NFT are your fans and the people that appreciate the sport and the team that you are a part of. And I've just seen that some athletes, just because they're in this bubble, in this center of egotism, call it that, it's difficult for them to actually leverage the full value of the NFTs.
Yes, guaranteed, dude. Because there is a real science there that's going to be beneficial for everyone involved in the future. It's guaranteed almost, unless we go into a doomsday. But it's literally guaranteed based on the technology of blockchain and NFTs. It's a guaranteed thing, bro. It will be installed. Whether the people, whether the fraudsters or the hacksters are around, they will find they're going to just meet the legal system just the way that it might even be more efficient. Who knows? But yes, that's an opportunity for someone to figure out. But right now, I think it's happening, and for athletes to you see, I think what is a bit confusing for them is that they might not see the true essence of the utility and look at it as an opportunity, or should I say, a possibility that they can lead their fans astray. For instance, if they tell these people, hey, get into the system, there might be some fans that sell their homes or their policies or take out loans to jump into these things. And for instance, if we go into a bear market, their portfolio drops and all of a sudden they have a vendetta against this athlete or this artist saying, see, man, my best player, all of a sudden, you know what I mean? Like, and then there's this disparity with the player and the fan. So I think that's maybe where some of them are thinking, oh no, I don't want to like actually get into the finance point of things and lead people astray. But then there's that option of memorabilia and the opportunity for investment. But then there's also the other opportunity for, like we spoke about with ticketing, where now you can get, you know, your fans can get in touch with you through this system that's so well engaged. Why wouldn't people want to do that? So I think it's speak about that conversation, like how can we separate this distance that we have with our fans as athletes and as artists through this NFT utility. And I think if that starts to become the conversation, it's going to become more widespread, and eventually that memorabilia, the collectors and the investments is going to happen. There are going to always be that. There's always traders, there's always people in that space. But for us to see that it's completely ubiquitous to that only is being naive. I think it's probably only 5%. Much like social media. Social media, maybe it's taken a big portion, but right now, big corporates only see it as a 5% or maybe 10% of their marketing portfolio. You know,
I think that was actually wonderfully put, should I say? And I think what I would end off on now is you touched on something so important, and I think it cannot be emphasized enough, particularly towards the athletes. The fans are the lifeblood of sport.
Yes.
You are put on this pedestal by virtue of who you are as an athlete, but also by how you're perceived by the individuals that are supporting you and following you. So it's in your best interest to find ways like creating NFTs and launching collections and providing the utility post the sale to your fans in order for them to have greater engagement, because that's what people want. Everyone wants to see the back room of a change room. Everyone wants to be in the dressing room before a game to hear what's said, after a game when they win, after a game when they lose. Everyone wants to be a part of that. That's why we're fans. And I think closing this distance, what you spoke about now, is what SportsFinder is trying to do. It's trying to bridge that gap now and allow the fans to truly engage with the athletes that are selling on the platform. So on that note, Jonah, we've come
amazing.
to everyone. That was brilliant. To everyone that's watching us, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We really appreciate the follows, and please continue to follow us in next week's episode. Jonah, any closing remarks as we normally do?
Oh man, yes. There was something I came across in a book by Carlos Castaneda.
Did you prepare this?
No, it just came into my mind because I knew you were going to ask me.
Okay,
And I was like, hold on, there's only one thing that's been on my mind. And it was there was a quote by Don Juan, and it was like, when you face an indecision about what path to take, always question whether the path you choose has heart. Simple. Shut, brother.
I love it. All right. Thanks, everyone. See you next week.
Much love. Shut.
Good day.